but today we are going to be talking about flower arranging, and I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Alrighty. Hi. Hey everyone, my name is Brousseau, and I am a florist here in Albuquerque. I work at Melba's Flowers, which is over on San Mateo and Osuna area. Melba's is a family-owned and operated shop. So Melba started the shop about 25 years ago, and still comes in and works with us, although she's retired. Her son Andy runs the shop now, and his daughter Lacey actually works with us also. So we're local owned, local operated if you're looking for anything floral. And I have been working in the floral industry since I was in high school. I graduated high school in 1992, so you can do the math. And I studied floral design, horticulture and floral design at the University of New Hampshire, where I grew up, and taught floral design at an agricultural high school until my children were born, and then took a little hiatus for probably about 16 years. And then when we moved here 8 years ago, I got back into working. So it's something I love. It's a lot of fun, but I also really enjoy the teaching part of it. So I'm excited to be here with you guys today. So what I wanted to talk about is how to take grocery store bouquets. You know, you show up at someone's house with a grocery store bouquet, you cut the bottom and stick it in a vase, and it doesn't look its best usually. So I wanted to talk about how we can take these grocery store bouquets and turn them into something really pretty. And so some things to think about when you're looking for flowers. You can pretty much all the grocery stores have bunches of flowers. Smith's, Albertsons, wherever. So I personally love to go to Trader Joe's. They have amazing flowers. Their prices are super reasonable, and they have a really great selection of flowers. But Albertsons also has a really good flower selection. Smith's is kind of questionable sometimes. They just don't have people that necessarily know how to take care of them. If you work at Smith's, I'm really sorry. But, you know, it's just one of those things. They don't have specialists there. So when you're looking for bunches of flowers, there's 3 different types of flowers that you kind of need for a design in order for the design to look its best. So we have there's flowers that are called line flowers, and those are the flowers that are long and skinny, and they kind of define the shape of your arrangement. So we're talking about like delphinium or snapdragons or stock. This is stock. I actually bought this as my line flowers. This is stock. So you want to make sure that the bunch you get has some of those kinds of flowers in them, something long and skinny. Sometimes mini carnations can work in a pinch because they're long and skinny and have lots of different flowers on them. The next type of flower is your focal flowers, and those are going to be like your roses or your hydrangea or Gerber daisies, something like that. That's kind of a bigger flower, and it's what's going to draw your eye to the arrangement. And those are going to be the things that you want to display. Those are the things you want people to really notice. And then the last type of flower is your filler flowers, like baby's breath. We all know baby's breath. In this bouquet, we have status, and we have wax flower. So there's lots of different types of just the little bitty ones. And those ones you put in last, and they're going to fill in your gaps and kind of give you some depth and that type of thing. So when you're looking at bouquets, you want to make sure that you have those 3 types of flowers in there, and that you have different types of greens as well. So in the design world, there's lots of theories about greens. I like to use the greens, different kinds of green material to cover my mechanics of my vase, and so it kind of looks like you have a plant with flowers coming out of it. Some flower shops are very minimal with their greens. They want to just see the flowers. So it really just depends on what you like. I tend to, when I go to get flowers at a grocery store, I usually buy a bunch that is also just greens. They'll have a small bunch that has greens in it, because usually they have like 2 pieces of leather leaf, the fern, in there, and that's just not enough for me to do what I want to do. So I'll usually buy, and our Trader Joe's this time didn't have just greens, but this bunch has a lot in there, so I think we'll be good. The other thing that's really important is to make sure that there's nothing that's molding or like slimy in your bouquet, in the bouquet that you pick up. So on this one, I actually fold everything down. I cheat. I I pull it back up again, but I pull it down and take a look and make sure that down in here there's nothing green, nothing slimy and nasty, because if the stems are molding, the flowers aren't gonna live, and that mold's gonna get on everything. You can clean it. If you find something when you get home, not a big deal. You can just wash it off, but it's just not gonna last as long. So I try to check pretty well while I'm still there. So that's kind of the basics of buying the flowers. Again, whatever store you're at is gonna have something there most likely. So when you get your flowers, you're gonna have one of these little packets in here. This is a flower preservative. What you don't want to do is just pour this right into your vase and then fill up your water, because it has directions on the back of how much water you should use for each one of these packets. And not enough of these is fine, but if it's too much of this packet for your vase, then your flowers are going to get burned. This is a preservative, and your flowers will die much more quickly. It would be better to just put them in plain water. But this packet that I have is a tiny little guy. This is too much water for him, but like I said, a little bit is better than none. So we're going to use that. And so I like to mix it up in a pitcher ahead of time. Oh, I didn't bring anything to mix with. Okay, no, that's fine. And then you can keep this pitcher on your counter. It doesn't have to be refrigerated. You can keep it on your counter, and then as you're refilling your vase every day or two, as the flowers drink, you can just use this water, and then it's constantly getting that flower food. All right, that's it. So in a design, there's a couple different theories that we think about with floral design. One is color theory, and I'm not going to go into depth in this, but darker colors recede into something, and a lighter color is going to come forward. It's kind of like when you do your makeup, and they tell you when you're older you have to put darker colors different places, and to make your face look right. Same thing with arrangements. Darker colors are going to recede. So if you have a really dark flower, and it's going to make a little bit of a hole from a distance. So have you ever been to a wedding and someone used really dark flowers in their bouquet, and you can't see what the flowers are? Have you ever seen, or even if you've gone into a store and there's an arrangement there that has really dark flowers on it, because they recede and they go in, it makes it look like it's just one big black hole. So you want to make sure that you have a nice variety of light and dark if you're using darker colors, so that you can see the difference in your flowers. So the color theory. And then the other theory is kind of the shape of an arrangement. And I like to think of an arrangement as kind of like an explosion. So if something explodes, the lighter, smaller pieces are going to fly further away from the center of that explosion, and the heavier pieces are going to stay closer to the center. So when I'm arranging, not everybody does this, but when I'm arranging, I like to keep my bigger, heavier flowers down towards the center of the arrangement, and my line flowers are going to be things that are smaller. I don't put lilies at the top of an arrangement, because it ends up looking like an hourglass almost. So when that lily opens, it might be nice and tight in the beginning, but once it opens, you have this big blob on top of your arrangement. It's a beautiful flower, but it doesn't belong at the top. So I like to keep the smaller flowers up higher and taller and further away, while your bigger flowers are going to be down in towards the center to weight down your arrangement. Size-wise, whatever your vases you're using, this vase may actually be a tiny bit big for the flowers that I have, but for scale, you want to have your arrangement be 1 to 1.5 times the height of the vase you're using. So for this one, it would be your arrangement's probably going to be about this tall when you're done. That's why I'm saying this might be a little short, but that's okay. So, and the other thing is we try and get our stems all the way down to the bottom as close as we can, so that if you forget to water it for a couple days, things aren't going to die. Because once flowers are out of water, they're going to die pretty quickly. So a couple things to think about when you're thinking of vase size and scale. All right, so let me get started with this. So because I work at a flower shop, I'm a very messy designer. So I tend to if I'm doing this at home, I usually do it right by my kitchen sink, and I throw everything into the sink and then clean it up afterwards. But I'm going to try and not get things all over your floor today for you guys. So everything's going to be bunched together, and so the first thing I'm going to do is separate out all the flowers. Anything that's kind of broken, I'm going to take off so that we're not using anything that's going to die very quickly. And I'm going to separate out my lime flowers. Oh, I was going to use that. Thanks, honey. That's my kid. So with the other thing is you want to take out any leaves that are going to be in the water. Leaves in the water are going to rot, and it's going to cause your arrangement to not last as long. So I take off any leaves that are going to be down in the water. I use scissors. When I learned how to design, I always used a knife, which you can do totally fine. As my hands have gotten older, the knives are a little harder for me to pull with, and so I use scissors now. And I used to teach floral design to high school students, so they used scissors because they cut themselves if they did not, because they're crazy. So teenagers, you know. So then the other thing is with roses have these outside petals that are usually not as pretty as the rest of the rose. Those are called guard petals, and they're kind of the petals that that are on the outside of the bloom. Those, you can pull those babies right off. It does not hurt the flower. It makes it look prettier. If there were any flowers on here that were really broken on the petals that were broken on the top, I would take those off as well. And it really doesn't hurt the flowers. The green's the same thing. You can take off anything that's going to be down in the water. And so right now I'm just going to separate everything out and I have empty stems. All right, so this guy is Status. This is going to be one of our filler flowers. He's looking a little sad, but so kind of a side note, if you have a flower garden, you can use your flowers from home too. This is, and you can even use, like I have ivy that grows all over my house. I often we'll go and cut the ivy from my yard and use it in bouquets at our flower shop. So you can use, there's lots of ways to supplement what you buy in a store. We're just happy, went with what's in a store, but there's lots of different ways that you can do that. If you have little pieces like this, you could save that and put it in a tiny little vase, but that's going to be too small for this vase because it won't go down into the water. So let's get this one out. All right, so we're cleaning off stems, setting aside different types of flowers. So this is wax flower. I probably should be telling you these things. This is wax flower. It's kind of an evergreen. It's really pretty. It comes in white, this pink, a deep dark purple. It's a pretty one. And again, anything that's broken is going to come off. Anything that's going to be down in the water would come off. These big stems I'm going to take off too because that's not going to go. That's going to get in the way. So I'm just going to cut that guy off. And then we have some daisies in there. So daisies, I usually take off all the leaves off of a daisy because those leaves are going to get yellow really quickly. I don't know why, they just do. And so we just kind of take off all the leaves. And then also, usually with daisies, there's going to be a little stem in here because when they're growing them, they want them to stay bushy, so they prune the tops of them off. So we usually just take off that little dead stem too. Otherwise, people think that we've broken their flowers. So, all right, so we have some daisies. We have a hydrangea. Really pretty hydrangea. More roses. And this green is called boxwood. So it actually is there used to be a thing years ago where people would make like little Christmas trees out of these at Christmas time. So you cut the foam in the shape of a triangle, and they're not quite as popular as they used to be, but. More daisies. All right, so once I get everything all cleaned up, getting there. And the other thing with daisies, again, because you don't want things that are down inside your vase, you may have to take off of some of these little babies in order to so that they're not squished up when you put it in the vase, and that's fine. It won't hurt the flower. You want to try and not break the main part of the stem, but it doesn't hurt them when you rip things off. Rose. All right. So another thing that's to me is a design thing. And again, I don't know that this is universal, but I tend to work in odd numbers for balance. So like I have 5 roses. I prefer odd numbers. You can't always do that, but that's just, it feels more balanced to me. Perfect. All right, so then I have that and my nut. Okay. So this particular bouquet that I bought, it didn't have any line flowers in it. I could have used this boxwood as the line flower, and I probably will a little bit, but I also wanted to have something that really was a line flower. So I got a separate bunch that's stock. And stock is a wonderful flower because it smells spicy. It smells like cloves to me. My brother, when I was in high school, and this is horrible, but my brother used to smoke clove cigarettes, and that's what these remind me of. I love stock. So it's one of my favorite line flowers. So stock is, the only thing with stock is these little petals down, sometimes if they're all stuck in a bunch for too long, the tiny little flowers will get squished down at the bottom. And again, you can pop those up right off. They come off super easily. It's not gonna hurt the flower. And I like their leaves, so I try and leave as much of their leaves on as I can. But that's, again, an opinion, however you like it. So I'm probably gonna use 5 of these. Take off these bottom guys, so that they're nice and clean. All right. And this is one of the things I like about Trader Joe's is they have such a huge variety of their flowers and even colors within the flowers. And they also, the people that work there actually know how to take care of them. So they're usually in pretty good shape when you get flowers there. So, and stock does, when the petals come off, they get kind of slimy, so they dye things, so just be careful. All right, that guy's not looking great. All right, so we'll start with those. So, now I have everything all ready. And so now I'm gonna prepare my vase. So this water has the flower food in it. And I'm gonna fill up the vase first. I usually leave an inch or so, 1.5 to 2 inches that isn't full, so that as you put stems in, it doesn't overflow. All right. And then at Melba's, we use flower tape to give us some structure to our vase. This is not something that everybody does. This is just how we do it, so we don't have to use as many greens. And you can get this tape. You might be able to get it at Hobby Lobby or some of the craft stores. If you came to Melba's, we could sell you one. Or if in a pinch, you could use Scotch tape. That would work as well. And so I tape around the vase because sometimes the tape won't stick directly to the vase. So I tape around the vase. And then I make a grid across the top. Usually 3 or 4 pieces. And it kind of helps create a structure for the arrangement so things stand up a little better. You can do this if you have like a big bunch of greens. You could just use greens to do this, but it really does, this tape is, I didn't learn how to do this in school. Melba taught me this and it was a miracle. It's like, it changes the world. So, all right, so we tape that, we push those babies down, and then we're gonna tape around it again so it stays put. And with vases that have a lip on it, I'd like to tape underneath the lip. Not so far down that you can see the tape when you're done, but far enough down that the lip holds it in place. Because sometimes this grid pops off and then it totally defeats the purpose. It makes it really challenging. All right, so we're taped. So, you can't really see that, but there's a nice grid on there. The other kind of tape you can use that I know you can get at Hobby Lobby is there's a green waterproof tape that is used to hold foam into baskets usually. That's what we use it for. But I have seen people use that to make the grids on the top, which I guess is kind of nice because it blends into the greens. But we've always used this. This is a waterproof clear tape. So, all right. So then the steps for designing. First thing you want to start with is your line flowers, because your line flowers give you the shape of your arrangement. So I'm going to take these 5 guys that I did. Everything, and find out if there's a tallest one. There isn't really. So everything always needs a fresh cut right before it goes in the water. And at an angle is great if you can, because it helps it to be to draw up water. The fresh cut is because the cells that are at the cells that are at the bottom of the stem that draw up the water, after about 5 seconds at the most, those cells start to close up. So it's kind of like a clotting factor, like we have when we cut ourselves, we start to clot so that we don't bleed out. But these cells, so the fresh cut allows it to drink again. And so we're gonna put things in at an angle. I like these vases that have a fatter bottom versus a vase that's straight up and down, because you can get a nice angle on your flowers and it gives you a more full look if that's what you're going for. So I use these 5 pieces to give myself some shape. And chances are they're not going to stay exactly where I put them to begin with, and that's fine. So there we go. All right, so now we have our shape. So that's going to be kind of the shape that our flowers are going to take in. So the next step is going to be your focal flowers. The only exception to that is if you're using something that's super fragile, like a lily. When we use lilies, because their petals break off so easily, we'll put those in last. So we kind of leave a space for them, but we'll put them in last so that because otherwise by the time you're done, you have a lily with 2 petals and it looks really sad. So we don't want to do that. So my hydrangea, this is nice and big and bulky, so he's going to go down towards the bottom and it kind of anchors. So hydrangea first. If I had 2, I'd probably put another one over here. I try not to put them right next to each other because they look like eyeballs and that looks funny. So we don't want eyeballs. All right, so then our roses are next. And again, we're going to find out if we have ones that are taller. Okay, nice little cut. And they're going to go in. So my roses, I'm going to kind of put in the gaps of that the line flowers made. So that they fill in some of those holes. So we have 3 of them. Here's the 4th one, it's going to be down a little higher. And the other thing is you can kind of put things in at an angle, and so that you get some more width to it. Instead of putting everything straight up and down. All right. So there we go. We have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, 5 roses. Perfect. All right. So then we'll use these daisies. Daisies can be tricky because sometimes daisies are super clumpy, and so you end up with this little daisy ball and you don't really know what to do with it. Totally get it. It's hard for us too. So sometimes if it's super clumpy, I'll cut off some of this top branch so it makes it a little bit more airy. Sometimes they have really long, daisies are just weird. Sometimes they have really long stems and then you don't know what to do with those either. So like I said, I take those off and use them in a little vase. It just depends on the type of daisy that you have. So these guys I'm going to kind of put down in between here. And it's kind of nice to have some ins and outs so that you don't have, there is a style of arranging that you've probably seen that's kind of just this big ball of flowers. That's not what we do at Melba's usually. It's not, and so we like to have some depth to an arrangement, just like anything else that you're designing. It's nice to have depth to it. And so I kind of stick those guys down in the middle. I don't like to use daisies right at the top because again, they give you that kind of flat top look. And sometimes it almost looks like the arrangement got sat on. We've had people call and say, I think it got broken, but it's just how it was designed. So, all right, so we have our daisies in there. Ideally, I would have one more stem, and I'm going to pretend that this doesn't bother me, that there's only 2, but it kind of does. But it's okay. All right, so we get our daisies in there, and then we're going to put our greens in. So I don't have a ton of greens, so I'm going to keep these guys down pretty low. My goal with these greens is to cover up this tape mechanism so that when you look at this arrangement, you're not going to see any of the functions, the structure of the arrangement. So I'm going to keep these guys down kind of low. Sometimes if they're long enough, you can actually cut a piece in half and use the top half and the bottom half. I don't think these guys are going to be able to do that. So I'm just going to keep them down low here. You can see where there's some gaps and stick them in. This guy might be able to do that. So this one is probably a little shorter than you would want to have. I'm gonna take, oh, well, okay, I'm not gonna do that after all. So sometimes if they're long enough, you can take them and break them into 2 pieces, and it'll give you a little extra shape. That one didn't want to do that. Have some of these. Like I said, I just make a good hot mess when I'm doing this. All right. This guy's gonna go over here. There. So if I had more greens, I might put one more piece up on top just to kind of fill out this top layer, but that's okay. It's fine the way it is. And actually the filler flowers that I have are gonna fill in the gaps that I have. So that's a good amount of greens in there. All right, so then your fillers they're gonna do that. They're gonna be fill in these gaps that are in between the flowers that are, you don't necessarily wanna put another flower in there, but they can be in and out, so that you have that depth as well. So some taller, some smaller. They're giving us that depth. And these guys have nice big long branches on those, so those I'm gonna break into and use separately. Give it a cut. And these little pieces can go down by the bottom. Again, I'm trying to get my stems down as far as I can, so that if they don't get watered every day, those stems aren't gonna end up out of water. If your stem ends like way up here, chances are after a day and a half, it's gonna be out of water, and then that flower is gonna die pretty quickly. So we like things to last as long as they can. All right, there's that. And then this little guy is gonna do the same thing. It's kind of nice to have the 2 different textures of filler flowers. It gives it a little, like another kind of interest, so that everything's not the same shape and the same size. I do like to spin things a lot to make sure it looks nice from all the sides. Usually with vase arrangements, they're gonna be you wanna be able to see it from all different sides. If you're using it for like an entryway table or a buffet table where you're only gonna walk around one side, then you don't need to have pretty flowers on the back. Save your pretty stuff for the front, and the backs can be just kind of more greens. We tend to use foam more often for those types of situations, and then they tend to be more one-sided, but again, it just depends on what your situation is. For most things that you're gonna do, people are gonna be seeing it from all sides. If you're looking to do something like a centerpiece for your table, and you don't have foam or you don't wanna use foam, you can use a short little vase, and then that 1 to 1.5 times rule doesn't really apply when it's a centerpiece, because you want to be able to see over it. You don't want it in people's face when they're trying to look. So we tend to use little short, like 4-inch high vases or 5-inch high vases when someone tells us that it's going to be on a table, so that it's more controlled. All right, so there we have it. So we have the height from our line flowers, we have our focal flowers. So this would be the front of our arrangement. This is where people are gonna be seeing the most, is what I would do. These little vases, I love to put ribbon on. I didn't bring any ribbon, but I love to put like just a little shoestring ribbon to have it hang down. But you see that we have the depth, we have ins and outs, we have a variety of colors. We did keep this one a little monochromatic, which is fine, in meaning that it's all within one color scheme. But that's when you find, the nice thing about getting the pre-made bunches is that they usually all the flowers are gonna look nice together because they put them together for you, so. Perfect. Does anybody have any questions for me?
What about the idea of changing the water? You've got so many stems in there, and you got this crosshead grid effect with the tape, and yet I've read or thought I understood that, you had to change the water completely and put in fresh, preservative water,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. How would you do that without, if you changed the water altogether, took everything out, you destroyed the arrangement?
No, actually that's the nice thing about the grid. I'm gonna do this in my bag so I don't spill water everywhere. I'll show you. So because that grid is in there, you can hold these flowers back and pour the water right out. And then,
Oh.
and then when you add it back in, you tip it to the side, oops, and the water will, for the most part, go back. Oh, I went too far. Sorry. The water, you need towels, baby?
Yeah.
The water will go back in. So that grid is actually helpful with that because things don't shift around as much. And so actually we love that grid for our delivery drivers because during holidays, we have a whole bunch of people that deliver for us and things don't tend to get shifted around a lot because we have that grid in there. So things, when they leave the shop, they're gonna look the same when they get to your house. Yeah, so the grid actually helps. As far as switching the water out, I think it's okay to just add the water in, unless your water starts to get cloudy. If it starts to get, like it looks like it's kind of murky, like pond water, then absolutely you want to switch it out because it's got bacteria in it. But for the most part, you usually can just add to it as long as the water has stayed fresh. So that's kind of I think a personal, they will last longer if you change the water out. Usually if you're, oh gosh, I'm making a mess. I'm just gonna leave that there. Usually those packets that you get, they wouldn't have enough water to change the water completely out. But you could dilute it. Again, some preservative is better than no preservative, so you could dilute that water if you needed to. You just don't want the preservative to be more powerful. It's okay if it's less powerful. So, good question though. I like that question. Any other questions? Yeah.
What about other methods of preserving? I've read about using a lemon lime soda or
Yeah.
a little bit of vinegar in the water.
Right. I honestly, I've heard of like a cap full of bleach. I've heard a whole bunch of different things like that. I honestly don't know because I've always used the flower food. So I would say if you're going to use something like that, it would need to be super diluted, so that it doesn't overpower the plant, because those kinds of things could, as the plant drinks it could kill the plant. So it'd have to be very super diluted. But it would be a good experiment at some point to see if it actually does help or not. Usually you actually can buy little containers of that flower food at garden centers or I imagine at the craft stores that have floral supplies. Another good resource is the Albuquerque florist on San Mateo, in between Candelaria and Comanche. They are a public wholesale also. So
what was the name of that place again?
Albuquerque florist.
And where is it?
It's San Mateo, between Comanche and Candelaria, where the Peter Piper pizza place is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they have a public wholesale, meaning that you can go in and buy bunches. It would be a bunch like that stock was. The grower's bunch or this of one particular flower. You're not going to find mixed bunches wholesale. So they are a full service florist, but they also have that wholesale. And you can buy supplies there as well. So you could get a small tub of the flower food if this is something you're going to be doing a lot of. You can buy the florist tape there, this thin 1/4-inch tape that I use. So there's a lot of, that's another good option for people. So, and you can also just save these little guys. Sometimes when you buy bunches, there's a whole bunch of these in here. Sometimes there's none. So it just depends on where you bought from or how they packaged them. But I would usually shy away from other methods unless I try it out myself. So another thing that you might hear, which gives me heart palpitations every time someone says it, some people talk about crushing stems. Have you ever read that?
Oh, yeah.
On like hydrangea, and people will do it on stock. It breaks my heart when people do that. So it's kind of the stem of a flower works kind of like our finger. All the vessels that go through it, you know how your blood vessels go up and down, and so the tip of your finger, if it doesn't get blood, that tip of your finger is going to die. Think about how well those blood vessels would function if someone smashed your finger. It wouldn't work very well. And it's the same thing with plants. All their little vessels are in there, they're protected by their stem. The minute you smash that stem, you're crushing all those vessels. I think the concept behind it is it's supposed to open them up, but it really just crushes them. It makes them very sad. So, yes.
I've been told that lilacs that you're supposed to crush the stem.
Yeah, I don't know so much about woody plants. I still probably would not crush the stems because it just doesn't. When you know the structure of the plant, it mean when you crush it, it's going to crush that vessel, and so it's going to be really hard for it to drink. I think what it does is it sends it into a shock, and so it does bloom for a while because all of its energy is like, oh my gosh, I need to fix this, and it goes and it blooms really beautifully, but it's not helping it drink at all. Which is what the concept is behind it, I think. So, to me, a nice clean angled cut is going to be way better than a crush. If you prove me wrong, that's awesome. Let me know. But I would love to hear that. But yeah, we do experiments sometimes at the flower shop where we'll try different people. People have said so we have an issue with dahlias for some reason. Dahlias die immediately. I don't know why. We have found that with dahlias, if you stick their heads in super hot water when they first come in for half an hour or so and then process them, they'll last longer. I have no idea why, but it works. So we do it. So it's just one of those things. We read it on the internet. We're like, hey, let's try it. And it works. So we do it. So any other questions?
Are there some plants that just require more water than others? So just to be aware when you get a bouquet with this one, you may be looking at changing the water more?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm trying to think of one right now. Lilies require a lot of water. So if there's lilies in your arrangement, you're going to want to water it more. Sometimes flowers, if they're super fresh, they'll drink more right away. So oftentimes at our shop, we'll put a little hang tag on it that says I'm thirsty. And that means you want to make sure you keep up on this because it's going to drink a lot in the next couple days. So things that don't drink a lot usually are like carnations, chrysanthemums, daisies, those kinds of things that are a little bit low maintenance flowers. Those don't tend to drink quite as much. The fresher the flower is, the more it's going to drink also. So usually if you have this pitcher on your counter, just top it off every day when you notice it's getting a little lower, and it'll be happy. So another thing with lilies is I know a lot of people shy away from lilies because of allergies, which I totally get. I have some wonderful plant allergies. There's two different kinds of lilies. There's oriental lilies and there's Asiatic lilies. Oriental lilies are like the stargazers, those pink and white ones that are super smelly, or the Casablancas, which are the pure white ones that are super smelly. Those are the ones that are allergens. The Asiatic lilies don't have much of a smell to them, so they actually are not as allergenic. Just so you know, so if you're thinking, this person has allergies, usually the oriental lilies are not going to be a problem. And those are the oranges and yellows and the pale pink, the pretty pink ones, the kind of fall, the spring and fall color ones. Those ones are not going to be super smelly and allergenic, just so you know.
Take out the Cheetos.
Huh?
And take out the Cheetos.
Oh, take out the Cheetos, yes. So the pollen that's in the lilies, when the lilies open up and they have the 6 little stems of pollen, that pollen stains like crazy. So as soon as those flowers open up, if you can just gently tug on those pieces of pollen, they'll pop right off. It doesn't hurt the flower, and it'll prevent any staining on your furniture, your clothes, anything like that. Most of my jeans that I wear to work are like orange on the side because I brush by them, or I get it on my fingers and I brush it off on my pants. So they will stain your fingers a little bit, but it'll come off with dish soap off of your hands. So yeah, and Danny calls it Cheetos because it's like when you're eating Cheetos and your fingers get all orange. Yeah.
It's true.
It is true. So she's worked with me at the shop before. Yeah. Good questions, guys. Anyone else? Is there anything that I didn't cover well that you guys have a question about, or anything I sped through? No? Okay, perfect. So it's not, it's very nice to be able to have a skill like this and not have to pay someone like me to do it. So the other thing I will mention, just as an aside to help you guys out, this has nothing to do with designing. This is about ordering flowers. If you're going to order flowers for somebody, call a flower shop directly. Don't go through 1-800-Flowers or FTD or any of those websites. Make sure you're directly on a flower's website. It saves you about 40%. The amount of fees that those people charge is pretty ridiculous. So whenever you can, Google a local flower shop, call them directly, or make sure you're directly on their website. because the flower shop only gets a little over half of the money that you pay for those arrangements. So your arrangement is going to be disappointing if you use one of those kind of order gatherer type things. So I don't know why they get to do it, but they do. So make sure that you're really on the flower shop's website if you're ordering online, because we have found that some of the order gatherers, the 1-800-Flowers, they'll kind of steal our website almost. Like you'll really be on their website, but they're saying you're on our website. So just a little aside, if you're ordering flowers, if you need something here in Albuquerque, call us directly. Or if you're ordering out of state, just Google a flower shop, look at their reviews, look at their pictures, and you'll find something. It'll save you a lot of money. You'll get a nicer arrangement in the end. So that's a little freebie. Yeah. Anything else I can answer questions? No? Well, thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you learned something great, and you guys are going to have some beautiful Mother's Day arrangements.
Okay, thank you.